Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a Martin Luther King Day special. We'll talk about what the Martin Luther King holiday has meant in Arizona. We'll hear from two winners of Tempe's MLK Diversity Awards, and we'll see and hear the works of some MLK essay and poster contest winners. That's next on the special edition of Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this special Martin Luther King Day edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Arizona was one of the last states to approve a paid holiday for Martin Luther King and suffered in the national spotlight as a result. But Arizona also became the first state in which voters and not lawmakers approved the holiday. Here to talk about what the holiday has meant for our state is ASU professor Neal Lester, who is a winner at this year's Tempe MLK Diversity Awards. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me again.
You bet. Arizona, the history is pretty well known. Originally rescinded by Governor Meekum for a variety of reasons. Didn't want to replace Columbus Day. Thought Martin Luther King was somehow subversive. Wrong to honor the civil rights movement with one individual. Super Bowl was a factor in that as well.
Absolutely.
Yet in '92, the state goes ahead and approves the holiday. That's a pretty rough and tumble history. Not many states have that kind of background.
Correct. Well, it's interesting because 1992 is not that far away. And in fact, it's in my lifetime, and it's in my lifetime being here in Arizona. And while I wasn't immediately part of that conversation, I certainly heard about that conversation while I was in Alabama. And it did become part of my decision about whether or not to come here. But then other places had histories that were equally sort of contentious relative to race relations. So when I decided to put this on my consideration list, people kept saying, well, you realize Arizona is a place where they're not going to honor the MLK holiday. And I thought, well, but that means there's work to do. It doesn't mean that's another reason for me to go out there. What I did discover when I came here in 1997, however, is that while race relations may not have been defined in terms of black-white terms, it was defined in terms of white-brown skin terms. So the first headline that I saw as we moved into Ahwatukee from the Arizona Republic was, if your skin is brown and you speak Spanish, your civil rights can be violated. So it reminded me that having the holiday didn't necessarily change the perspectives of those, or the hearts of those who lived here. So policy can't necessarily change hearts.
When you came from Alabama, straight to here, the
yes.
folks in Birmingham.
Yes.
And in other parts of the country, because we were always wondering, those of us who lived here at the time,
Yes. Yeah.
what are we looking like to the rest of the nation? What did we look like to the rest of the nation?
Well, Alabama didn't have a whole lot of room to sort of speak in that arena because I was at the university where George Wallace was standing in the door to keep black people out. And I certainly didn't want to go to Mississippi because we knew that there were bodies hanging from poplar trees there. So it's an interesting sort of way of looking at this as not something that's unique to Arizona, but rather something that was happening across the country, this whole notion of racial division. And the civil rights movement brought that out, but just because we were able to pass legislation to stop some of the Jim Crow laws and to get people to vote didn't mean that people necessarily accepted that change. And I think it's the same sort of thing that we see today. There may be a lot of progress, but there are ways in which policy can and doesn't change people's hearts and their actions.
Have we lost sight of the meaning of this holiday? You say it's not that long ago.
Well,
other folk, yeah,
it's not that long ago. I mean, and I say that relative to the fact that since, you know, I grew up in the Deep South, and I see some of the same kinds of manifestations of racial difference here, except it's brown people. There seems to be this sort of awareness that in order to define oneself, we have to define someone else negatively. We saw that even during the election. To talk about one's own strengths was not necessarily the focus, it was rather talking about how bad the other candidate is, not how strong I am. So this whole sense of what is real is not about us, but it's about sort of disparaging other people, oppressing other peoples.
We've had you on before for Project Humanities, Humanity
Yes.
101. I mean, you've got this big program out there, compassion, integrity, empathy, forgiveness. We've
Yes.
had you on talking about this.
Yes.
And I just want to ask again, why are we like that?
Well, we've always been like that. There's this sense that you know, the human condition is sort of rooted in difference. And it's easy to imagine that in the worst of times, we also have the best of times. So the worst of times, this whole country was founded on violence against a group of people, but we somehow forget about that. We somehow forget about that when we have conversations about immigration, recognizing that those who came and discovered this country were also immigrants. So this notion that violence is new or that we have always been the best to each other doesn't bear out in our American history. So we haven't lost our humanity. What we have to do is continually find our humanity even within those moments where we seem to be our most inhumane.
Do we, interesting, do we fail in the sense of self-reflection?
I think that's one of the hardest things to do. I think it's easiest to point fingers and blame at other people rather than looking at what we bring to the table or what we are not bringing to the table. So I think in that whole list of 7 principles, whether it's respect, integrity, empathy, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, self-reflection is the one that means that you don't have to do this with somebody else. You have to sort of look inwardly and look in that mirror and make a choice to see if you're being the best person you can be. And, you know, President Obama said this on the occasion of the Tucson tragedy. We may not be able to stop all the evil in the world, but how we treat each other is entirely up to us. And that's what the self-reflection is about.
Martin,
It's
go ahead,
not the
please.
situations, but how are we reacting to those situations?
Martin Luther King's message. It's been a while. You're talking 50 some odd years now.
Yes.
If he were, if I can't say if he were there today because he'd be tweeting, for goodness sake. Who knows how that message would get out there?
Right.
But
Right.
the impact of that message
Right.
then,
Right.
can any message have the same kind of impact now?
Well, it still does, though. I mean, when we're talking about change, there's a kind of urgency that is often missing from conversations about Dr. King's legacy. His I Have a Dream speech is not about being patient, but rather being impatient. That America has money in the bank, but it's written us a check that it hasn't made good on. And I think we're still talking about that relative to civil rights for many groups. Not just about black people or brown people, but this was also about poor people. And I think we sort of forget the sort of economic component of that. So other groups have sort of adopted the we shall overcome and the fact that we're fighting for whether it's the LGBTQ. And I'm not saying that these particular struggles are synonymous, but I am saying that there are intersections there. So until we can sort of look at the humanity of every individual, then we will continue to ask that question, are we losing our humanity and how do we measure progress?
Is there an ebb and a flow to this? I mean, can you move fast and then slow down because you're moving too fast?
Well, I think if we sort of complicate that and not look at it in terms of black and white, metaphorically or literally, or good and bad, but look at it as complex. Charles Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was a time of darkness, it was a time of light. We have always had, as a human condition, the challenge of reconciling those, whether it's in our personal lives, our professional lives, and our political lives.
Political lives, real quickly. What's happening in politics right now? Again, are we looking retrograde here? I mean, are the waves going back out to the sea?
Well, keep in mind that 8 years ago, everybody wasn't, there were people, foaming at the mouth when President Obama won. So, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And the human condition is how do you resolve those? In a competition, which this is, in an election, someone wins, someone loses. But how do we move to the point where we look at those moments between elections so that we actually get along and demonstrate our humanity to each other? I think that's what the challenge will be.
Last question. Martin Luther King Day, what does it mean to you?
Well, I hope that it means more than marches, and I hope that it means more than recitations of I Have a Dream. I hope it means that we take this message of possibility and strength of character as something that we can live and digest so that it becomes real for each one of us. And that we don't stop dreaming of possibilities. We cannot resort to cynicism and pessimism. We have to believe that we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one is the hand in any matters of progress. And that's what I'm trying to do in the classroom. That's what I'm trying to do as a scholar. That's what I'm trying to do as a parent, as a spouse, but as a decent human being. And that's a challenge for each and every one of us, no matter where we are in our lives.
It's good to see you again, Doctor. Can you hold on a second? The Tempe Diversity Awards.
Absolutely.
You were a winner. We got a couple other winners. I would like for you to join us with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
want to hear from you. Submit your questions, comments, and concerns via email at arizonahorizon@asu.edu.
Professor Neil Lester is not alone in being recognized by Tempe's MLK Diversity Awards. Two other winners are joining us now tonight. They are Earl Newton, CEO of the Hood to Hood Foundation, which won the Community Group Organization Award. And also joining us is Destiny Medina, a winner of the Individual Youth Award category. Destiny is a senior at Marcos de Niza High School. Good to have you both here. And Dr. Lester, it's good to have you hanging around as well here for the discussion. You betcha. Oh, you bet. Earl, let's, Hood to Hood. What are we talking about here?
Hood to Hood is a universal grassroots organization that has decided to tackle the problems of homelessness, violence, drug abuse in our communities. But we take a holistic approach to where we attack the whole family, be it from the parents to all of the siblings. We found that a lot of times we deal with the young people, but we send them right back into the environment that had them off track to begin with. So not only do we deal with the young people, but we try to change the whole family and give them a different outlook, a positive aspect. We found that many people don't do better because they're not exposed to better.
I was going to say, it has to be difficult. I mean, it's difficult enough with one person. Getting the whole family involved has got to be tough.
Well, you know, oftentimes, a lot of the young people we deal with, the family is reaching out for help. So it's easier when the family is reaching out for help because they realize there's something that needs to change. And so when you have that paradigm in there, it's easier to deal with the entire family.
Okay. And Destiny, winner of the Individual Youth Award. You're a member of the Stand and Serve Club at Marcos de Niza. What is that?
Stand and Serve, it's a place that teaches young kids who are, going to school and give them activities to do after school. And they teach them how respect is involved in the environment and how showing respect and to others creates a very good place and an environment for others to be in. And they learn how to deal with people who are hurting, who need help, and they have resources that we give them. And so we're just teaching them how to, later in life use these skills that they have.
And these are middle school students. I would imagine that you hear all sorts of stories when you first meet up with these kids, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
I just sit and listen, and I, let them tell me everything they have. And then afterwards we talk about it, and then we, figure out something that they can do for them and something that, official can help us with and get them resources.
Dr. Lester, as far as what Earl's doing here, dealing with the family, what Destiny's doing over here, kind of dealing one-on-one with middle school kids and showing them that this is not the way. I mean, these techniques, are they changed over the years?
Well, I think the fundamentals of humanity have not changed. I think kindness, compassion, integrity, respect, empathy, forgiveness, self-reflection, those things that we have come at Project Humanities to call Humanity 101, not a class, but these fundamentals in a shared humanity have not changed. It's also something that doesn't have to be taught. We have to be reminded of it, but we certainly don't have to talk, and it transcends the culture. So I don't think people have fundamentally changed. Our circumstances may change, and how we respond to those circumstances can certainly be a lens through which we can look at our shared humanity.
And I was reading where Hood to Hood, the idea is that, hate, violence, this negativity, pessimism, cynicism, go down the whole line, the whole list of words here, is not, in the long run, the answer.
Correct. I like to often quote a quote by Dr. King that's often overlooked and that I live by personally. He said, "I've decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear." And so when you deal with that, we often talk about I have a dream, but the power of love, when you talk about diversity, love allows you, because at the end of the day, poverty, homelessness, drug abuse, these are things that affect every race of people, regardless of race, creed, or color. And so we look beyond that. And when you have love, I also pastor, so love is something that I preach oftentimes, because the one scripture says love covers a multitude of faults. So when you have love, it covers a lot of problems that we have. And we realize under the banner of love, all of us are there together.
How difficult, though, is it to get that? I mean, you deal with gangs.
Yes, sir.
I know Tempe PD, you work in the gang squad
Yes,
there
sir.
as well. How difficult is it to get through to some of these kids?
Well, it's really not difficult because we come from the aspect, I have individuals that are gang counselors that have done 20, to 25 years in prison. And so a lot of these individuals, I kind of just put the ideas out there, and then I have individuals that have been there. I've never been to prison, but I have individuals that have been to prison. So I'm not the one that try to make that connection. I let the individuals that have been there, and oftentimes, because you have a lot of things you can read in books, but until you have your boots to the ground, it's a different story. If you never experienced some of these things, if you never experienced having one of your family members killed or anything of that nature, it's a difficult thing to do. But we've been fortunate to have individuals from all walks of life that are able to meet these young people right where they are.
And Destiny, I know you've been a middle school student once in your life. When you deal with these middle school students now, how do you almost imagine you're dealing with yourself as a middle schooler?
Yeah, I imagine myself in them and imagine how I felt and what they are feeling. And when I first approached them, I'm like, hi, my name's Destiny. You know, I make them feel comfortable. I make them know that, you know, they can talk to me and, you know, they can come to me whenever they need me.
If a kid is especially difficult to get through to, how do you do it? How do you handle that?
I just let them, you know, I don't force them to tell me anything. I don't force them to do anything. I just want them to be there and to see how we do things so we can show them.
Have you had some kids come back to you after you've dealt with them and mentored them and say, look at me now?
Yes, actually I have. They're like, oh my gosh, I love this program and thank you so much. They are very, very grateful.
And we should mention you also distribute blessing bags to homeless. Mm-hmm. What are those?
Blessing bags are little bags filled with, you know, like toiletries, whatever you need. And so we went around walking around ASU and we gave them out to people who needed them.
And I know you help with community murals as well. Who are your mentors and
My
models?
mentors?
Yeah. When you were a middle school student, who did you listen to and look up to?
I mostly looked up to my family, my nana, my dad, and I looked up to how some situations they were in were hard and how they were able to get through them. And so they somewhat taught me through showing me how to get through these things. And so I learned as I lived on through life that I can do these things that they can.
Dr. Lester, we're hearing love is the answer.
Yes.
We're hearing family is the answer. The bottom line is there are answers out there.
There are answers, and I think the large umbrella is our shared humanity. You know, what I love what you're saying is that we have Humanity 101 in action because we're also engaged in bi-monthly outreach to an unstable community of adults in downtown Phoenix. We do it every other Saturday for 2.5 years. We call that Humanity 101 in action. So we're not just in a classroom talking about these, but we're out, as you say, with boots on the ground, and also recognizing the capacity to be empathetic and to recognize that any one of us could be in that circumstance, that family members, if you're connected with anybody, then vulnerabilities happen.
As far as the MLK Award Day, Tempe Diversity, the award, what does it mean to you to win this, to be honored here?
It's amazing that there are people that do care about the small organizations that are just out there, not looking for recognition, not looking for a pat on the back. I've been doing this for quite a while, just at the local ministry there, and just to have someone recognize the work that we're attempting to do. You know, it gives you a little boost to go a little further and keep on working.
Yeah.
You know, and say, okay, there is, you know, it's possible.
Yeah. MLK Award, what does it mean to you?
To me, it was quite a surprise when I got an award. You know, as you said, I wasn't looking for anybody to give me a pat on the back or anything. But to me, it means that I'm able to show others that what they are doing, it matters. It matters, and that they should know they should keep doing it. And, you know, one day it'll affect everybody.
And I'm guessing you're going to keep doing this line of work.
Yeah.
I got a feeling you got a social work future in you, huh? Sounds like it, yeah. Well, congratulations, one and all. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Connected. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Watch us online.
Every year, ASU's MLK Junior Committee holds an essay and poster contest that encourages students to reflect on the civil rights leaders' teachings. Contest participants have to illustrate their definition of leadership through service. More than 1,300 students submitted art, essays, and poems focusing on this year's theme, Be the Face of Change. Producers Rob McJanet and Elisa Adams introduce us to some of the winners.
I'm writing about one of my favorite people, my Grandpa Kenny. My Grandpa Kenny helps a lot of people. He's helped neighbors and family build fences, repair their houses, clean up their yards. Something special about my grandpa is he helps old people and people with wheelchairs and with canes.
He stood for being equal with black and whites. He kind of changed society. I wanted to put all the different kinds of change in the world. Abraham Lincoln was the first to set the slaves free, and then Rosa Parks, she kind of broke the rules by sitting in front of the bus, and then MLK had his speech and all the things that he did to change stuff, and then the last part is what you can do.
Do you know a person who shows leadership through service? My mom shows leadership through service with her acts of kindness by helping those in need and saving lives. I look up to my mother because she has great character. She teaches me through example. Despite the fact that she has her own struggles, she finds the time to help those in need. So this is my dad, this is my sister, that's my mom, that's me, that's my friend Piper, and my other friend Natty. It was about volunteering with your friends and your teacher and your family and everybody you like to make the world a better place, just like what Dr. Martin Luther King said.
He pretty much put the idea in people's minds that black people and white people could be the same. He was looked up to from I guess everyone who was in the black community, and I look up to my mom. She's pretty much, well, she is my mom, but she's also my role model. A mother's own love, so faithfully strong, she can lead me through trials when things go wrong. Her spirit of giving and willingness to escorts me through fear and anxiety I go through. When I was smaller and frightened in the night, she'd come to my bedside and guide me to the light.
So of course I thought about service, and then I thought about helping. And in class, we were doing something with helping hands. And so I kind of just thought of the helping hand, helping people. There's a man reaching down to get the people on there so that he can take them up to a happy place instead of a bad place so that he can help him. And then right here he's saying, come, I'll lead them. So he's gonna lead them. They're going like this because they're reaching for him, like that. And it says leader right here.
One of my favorite stories is when he saved a surfer from drowning. The kid was hit by a big wave and the surfboard knocked him out. My grandpa jumped into the ocean to get him out of the water and gave him CPR. It saved his life. I love my grandpa and I want to be just like him. He is the best person and example.
My mother is my role model in so many ways. She represents what I want to be for the rest of my days. My mother is a leader, as true as can be, and that makes me feel very blessed to be me.
Leadership isn't about how we advance as an individual, but how far we lead others. My mother is a kind-hearted, helpful, and selfless. In my mind, she is Supermom.
I like the message a lot because I have a lot of friends, and some of them are a different color than me.
He stood up for what he believed in, even if anyone thought otherwise.
I think we celebrate MLK because he basically changed a lot of society. You could change some of it also. You could be part of that change in the world.
Work together and help out to make the world a better place, just like what Martin Luther King wanted us to do.
The winners will be honored at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Breakfast Celebration at ASU on January 19th. Tuesday on Arizona Horizon, a presidential historian and an attorney will discuss laws regulating nepotism and conflicts that apply to the president. And we'll hear about how Phoenix's unique method to hire its new police chief drew worldwide attention. That's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you. When you want to be more informed, Arizona PBS delivers news and analysis with multiple perspectives, thanks to financial support from you and
more than 90% of the time, hospice care is delivered